government agency has some problem that they need to solve. And as a small business, if you can become an expert in it, the government wants to talk to you.
From the Army to the boardroom, meet Edward Tuorinsky, a veteran turned cybersecurity powerhouse.
He's revealing the secrets of government contracting and the pitfalls to avoid.
Just because you're young doesn't mean you don't have value.
What was those first steps that you took?
Subcontracting is really the best way to get into government contracting. There are plenty of stories out there, companies of 5, 10, 15 people winning these multi-billion-dollar, multi-year contracts.
How is it the commercial side different for you?
It's typically smaller dollar value contracts.
You said it's open to all organizations, not just veterans.
It's open to all organizations, but the focus is to support.
Can you share some of the common pitfalls to avoid when bidding government contracts?
Most of the common pitfalls are...
Ed, thank you for being on the show today. Tell us a little bit about DTS and what is it that you do?
So DTS, we have two sides of our organization. We have a federal government contracting side where we support the Department of Defense and federal agencies with cybersecurity, defense, development, software development, project management, education and training. Then we have a commercial that's purely a cybersecurity business that supports commercial companies in cybersecurity defense, compliance, security operations centers, threat hunting, threat defense, and then overall virtual CISO guidance for companies that are small to mid-size.
Can you share your journey from military service to becoming a cybersecurity thought leader and government contractor?
Oh, that's a good one. So originally, when I joined the military, I was sent to Korea, and I worked as a transportation officer in the 27th Maintenance Battalion. In there, I was the one person literally that could turn on a computer. We had 3 computers for the entire battalion, over 1,000 people, and I kind of became the computer guy. So from there, my extra duties turned into creating a local area network and a wide area network, which neither one I had heard of before, a LAN and a WAN, to start to connect computers together. I think we purchased a whopping 20 computers for the 1,000 people and started to distribute them out. The battalion was all the way up from the DMZ south into Camp Humphreys. So we're a pretty diverse organization and consistently supporting the warfighter in their exercises up on the demilitarized zone. So that really got me into the world of computing at a very low level, but the computers back in the day weren't complex. We just wanted to talk with each other. Then when I returned back to the States, because I was the guy that understood computers, obviously, they put me on a side project to develop a logistical tracking system. SEIC was the contractor at the time. So the logistical tracking system was RFID related. So we had tagged information and containers and vehicles, and they would go through certain interrogators and we'd collect that information. So we would try to find out what things came into the port, what left the port, we were on what ships. So we had certain checkpoints to really, I know today's times with the phones, people are like, well, that seems pretty simple. Back in the 90s, we just didn't have that technology. We did have technology that we could put on certain things to track it every step of the way, but it was very, very expensive. So we didn't do it for everything. So that was, and that led me into the transition out of the military into working for L3 Communications, NAVC, and the vertical launching systems, and developing logistical systems to track all the parts that were spread across 14 different systems. You had foreign military sale systems that were active at any one point in time.
Was it still using RFID then?
Yeah, it was using RFID. That it really started to develop into a point where we could track things a lot closer to exactly where it was in the supply chain. And so for a vertical launching system, it had 1.6 million parts per system, and there were at least 4 or 5 different variations. So it added up very quickly. And if there was a critical failure, say an O-ring or a washer, it had to be replaced, then an engineering change proposal would go through, ECPs, what they called it, and then they would have to fly that out to the vessel. So some of it was critical. Other ones they would stockpile in the ports when they come in for refit. Other ones would be in depot maintenance where they're going to refit the whole thing. And so you had to have parts in different places at different times for different vessels. And it's quite complex. And so my team developed a database using Oracle. And back in the day, I took a class that used the Hollywood video as the basis. So that's how old I am. It was
Hollywood
the
video. Okay.
Hollywood video of checking in VHS and checking them out. So it was tracking how many you had on hand, how many were late, how many do you have that you can, redistribute. So it was that basis of, you have all these movies, how many copies do you have, how many are in the store, how many are out. And then, it obviously, went with the late fees, which everyone loved back in the day. It cost you more for late fees than actually to go buy the movie.
Yeah, yes.
So that was kind of where my IT career started. And then as I progressed through L3 into other organizations, got into more and more complex systems, enterprise systems, integrating systems. And for me, the security of the systems was something that I never really thought about. I was always trained to secure information. And in the physical world, it kind of makes sense. You have a document that's marked with, that it needs to be secure. You put it in the safe, you put it in a room, you lock the safe, you lock the room, and then you have a little, sheet that you write on who goes in and out, and you control it.
Right.
So even from back in the day, controlling information was of second nature. Something was to be controlled, you would take precautions to make sure that you knew who had access to it. Did they really need access to it? And if they did access that information, you would monitor them so it got put back in the spot that it needed to be.
Right.
So as information systems developed and we tried to take away the silos, that was one of the big things, is get rid of the silos, get rid of the paper, and there was more access to information. We always tried to make sure that we had the right access for the right people and that we monitored who was accessing what. And that's what kind of led me down the path of cybersecurity. Before it was called cybersecurity, it was just information security. You had authority to operate. And really just at the fundamental level, for me, it's about the data. What data you have doesn't need to be secure, doesn't need to be protected. It might not be top secret information. That's usually siloed out. The government does a really good job at that. But it's, personal identifiable information, health information. It's these things that if collated together, people can do bad things with.
Right.
And then now we're here in today's times where, as the CrowdStrike incident showed, we're highly interconnected world, and we're highly dependent on technology to run our everyday life.
Right.
And I really enjoy the cybersecurity because it is an ongoing, it's ever changing. It's gone to the levels, not only do you have to defend and protect, do you have to monitor, and then it's just logical process and procedures. As I tell people, the simplistic way to think of it is there are bad people everywhere. There's not a lot of them, but it feels like there are, but they do a really good job at being bad people.
Right.
But they'll go down the street and they'll try to open up car doors, and the ones that are locked, they move on. And they get to what's unlocked, and then they still, maybe a cell phone, a purse, some change, whatever's in there, because they're looking for the easiest way in. Most of the bad people, they want the easiest way in. And same with, cybersecurity. Lock yourself down, have good, technical controls in place, and then that protects you. And then from there, unfortunately, it's either the willingness or unwillingness of people to do bad things. And I say that you have people that are in the organization that have access, that want to do something bad because maybe they're not happy with the situation.
Mhm.
And then there's people that this is the hard part of the business of they, unfortunately, someone has duped them in a social experiment or social engineering to do something to give a bad actor access. And they didn't mean to do it. They didn't want to do it, but you have to trust people. Part of cybersecurity is trusting that the tools you're using and the people that have privileges are respecting that and really honor what their role is in an organization. So a lot of it is picking the right tools and then educating your workforce to make sure that you're securing, everything you have. And it's fun. It changes every day. Unfortunately, bad things do happen, but I like that every day I wake up, it is something different. Last Thursday, or I guess Friday morning, I woke up in the middle of the night and heard about the CrowdStrike thing and thought the world was over. We didn't really know what was going on. Those days happen, but they're very rare. But normally it's monitoring, securing, educating, and just really taking care of our clients and their cybersecurity posture.
That's probably one of the easiest to understand answers that I've heard about explaining cybersecurity. Because a lot of people make it really complicated and they use jargon that the average person does not know. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, it is complex, but it's overall, it's really just protecting that data. And right now, humans are involved. AI is coming in, and it's going to be an assistive technology, but for the foreseeable future, humans are still really that key linchpin. Is that they're your greatest asset and the greatest vulnerability. But you can take that vulnerability and train your people to be your greatest cybersecurity asset in your organization.
So you went from L3 Harris. What inspired you to go out and start your own company, your own organization, DTS?
Youth and a little bit of craziness.
Okay. I like that. Those are good answers.
After L3, I went to some smaller companies, and we started out small and we grew. I learned a lot from those organizations, the leaders in those organizations. They gave me opportunities to understand how to execute for customers in the government space, and understanding contracts and finance and hiring and the federal acquisition regulations, the financial management regulations. There's a lot of regulations in the federal government that contractors have to follow. And I always thought about it. I was interested in doing it. And then one day I said, I said, just form a company. And I formed a company with a couple of friends, and we said, hey, look, we're gonna work on it at night and weekends and see where it goes. And then that effort fell flat on its face. we did a lot of work, and it was great. And it's really hard to get something off the ground. So I stepped back a little bit, focused on working my current clients with my current company and learning more, and then saw an opportunity really in 2011 to start another company, which is DTS, and we started in federal government contracting and education and training. It was a base e-learning type of contract. We were able to secure a quarter of an FTE for our first contract.
Okay.
It was tiny, but it got the wheels in motion. We had the paperwork, filling out the paperwork, making sure we're compliant, and that really, it just kind of started going from there. The basis of starting the company was I felt that I had enough experience and knowledge that I could do it well. I was a bit naive in that, but
That's great. I think naivety is a strength, is a superpower.
Sometimes I look back, I'm like, I should have just taken that vice president job at Northrop Grumman and called it a day. um,
That's good reflection. That's good reflection. I like that.
and from there, it just kind of evolves from there. You make good decisions, you make bad decisions. You learn from them. You try not to make that same bad decision twice, and you grow. As I tell a lot of my senior leaders, they say, so you learn from making mistakes, you learn from failing, and that's why I know so much, because I have made a lot of mistakes and I have failed a lot, and it hurts. But as they say, that you learn from the pain. If you're successful all the time, I love those people that win every time. I mean, they're great to watch, and they do. But I think those mistakes you learn from, and if you've played sports, or I think sports are a great learning experience. You learn by losing. If you continually win, I think sometimes it just doesn't create that long-lasting value. Losing to a good opponent, when you're out there and you're giving your all, you shouldn't be disappointed by it. But going after and losing to somebody that you should have beat because you weren't your best, or you didn't perform your best, or you didn't put your best on the table, that's something you definitely have to learn. And in business, the same way. You got to put your best out there. If I lose to somebody that's better than me, I'm going to say, congratulations. I'm going to go back and say, how can I improve to be better than them next time? So
I like it.
It's a crazy world out there. And I don't have any magical pieces of advice except just, keep going forward.
For students that are new to the concept, can you explain what government contracting is and why it could be a significant business opportunity?
So government contracting, and now that we have a commercial only business, they are two different sides of the coin. There's a lot of similarities, but the government contracting side is working with federal agencies to support their mission and achieving an end goal. And it could be as simple as helping develop training for their leaders, so they can become better leaders, or developing training on a brand new IT system. So the government, because you're going to train on the system, then you're going to be done. They don't have people internal that need to do that. They buy those resources outside. And once again, if they're looking for a new weapon system, the government doesn't build weapon systems. They don't build ships and tanks and airplanes. They go out for contract for those. So they outsource certain things that aren't typically their daily operating abilities, just like everyone does at home. You hire somebody to come in and put a new roof on your house. Could you do it yourself? Probably. I wouldn't advise it, but you hire out things to other people that are experts in their fields. And so the opportunity is that exact point, is finding what that customer needs to outsource and being the expert that they are going to. And the federal government contracts, I don't know, it's billions. It's over $500 billion a year. And it can be the Department of Defense all the way down to the Fish and Wildlife Service. Every government agency has some problem that they need to solve. And as a small business, if you can find that area, become an expert in it, the government wants to talk to you. They really like working with small businesses because they're agile, because they're inventive, they think outside the box, and they have government contracting programs that give incentives to contracting with small businesses. So I think it's a great place to start, but you really have to say, this is what I do, this is what I do really well, and be able to articulate that to your customer. I'm going to solve this problem for you.
I like it. And then, so what are some of the differences you see in the commercial side now that you do the commercial side? Because from my understanding, you were in the military, then you worked at L3, so you knew government. How is it the commercial side been that much different for you?
Well, a lot of mistakes and learning on that side. Um, it for one, the sales cycle is completely opposite. If you're looking at government contracting, it takes 6, 12, 18 months, sometimes years that you work to work the opportunity. And I say that one because the government contracting system is set up to be fair and give fair competition, so it's not a fast process because they want to make sure that it's done right. And so you're investing time to understand what that client needs. How can I solve the problem? Potentially providing a white paper or getting initial briefing, and then respond to requests for information, and then hopefully respond to a request for quote or request for proposal, and then they have to evaluate that proposal. And so that process on the good side could take 6 months. On average, it takes 12 to 18 months. And you're really investing a long time. The benefit of that in the government is they typically issue 3 to 5 year contracts. They're 1 year contracts with option years, but most of the time their intent is to complete the project. So they're not looking to make changes. So it is a good multi-year, usually multi-million dollar, commitment that the government's giving to you. And so that is really good from a company as a base. You're going to have this revenue coming in for multiple years. And it helps with planning. On the commercial side, throw that out the window completely. It's typically smaller dollar value contracts that are shorter durations, either 3, 6, 9, 12 months. 12 months if you're lucky. They're smaller dollar value. It doesn't take as long to get them from a sales cycle perspective, but it's completely different. You're working on a lot of upfront education, meeting with potential customers. There's a lot of social media outreach. There's advertising. There's a lot of things that don't benefit you on the government side that you don't necessarily need to do, that you're outputting, and you're churning, and to get that same $1 million in $100,000 contracts, it's simple math. You need 10 of them. Over here, I need one. So it's the different apparatus on that front end of the marketing and the advertising. The execution is very similar. So from that standpoint, it's applying quality deliverables, standard process and procedures to produce quality deliverables that meet customer satisfaction, and customer intent. I always tell people that if you're meeting a customer's intent, then you're going to make them happy, and it's an interesting dynamic of, well, the contract says do this and do it to the standard, but the customer might want something different. The way I equate it to is when you're in school, if you're writing a paper for a certain professor or teacher, there's a certain way they like it. There's a gray area between that A and B. Oh, that's good, it's great, I get a B, but why am I getting an A? Because you're meeting the intent of that professor. And I think understanding that human dynamic of your customers and really what ultimately they want and what they're intending is very important to delivering that top quality. And if you do that on both sides, that leads to high customer satisfaction. It leads to customer retention. It leads to, hey, look, you completed this project for us. You met our objectives. You met our intent. We have another one that we think you can solve for us. So let's start to think about that and the next one. And that's really what you want. You want to deliver and start the next project, beginning, middle, and end. And that's the same for the government and the same for the commercial. And once you get the clients, you want to be able to keep solving problems for them.
I like that. I know you said you got your first quarter of an FTE. What were some of the steps that you took when you started looking to the space about how to get that first FTE? Because a lot of times people say, well, I don't have past performance, so it's hard to get a contract with no past performance. But how do you get past performance with no contract? The chicken and the egg. So what was some of those first steps that you took?
So
If you
every
can
small
remember.
business rep in the government will love what I'm about to say, but it was a subcontract.
Okay.
It was a contract that was much, much, much larger, and the prime did not do any education and training at all. And the customer said, "Hey, can you solve this problem? We need some training on how we do this process. We're bringing in new government employees. The ones that are here for 30 years know how to do it. They don't know how to do it. So can you teach the new people the same thing these people know that have 30 years of experience?" And the prime was like, we don't do this. So I knew the owners of the organization. They had reached out, and I said, sure, let's do this. I had an expert that I'd worked with for years, and I called her in, and we started going for it. So subcontracting is really the best way to get into government contracting. Then you get that past performance, you get that experience, and then you're able to prime contracts. Once we got that contract and it started to grow the company, the other contracts came from my unique experience and past performance, and
Okay.
that was my knowledge of certain very unique systems within the DoD and the logistical area. I was one of very few people that had the skill sets, so I was able to be a subcontractor as a subject matter expert and come in, because I was one of few people that, working with the Army, working with the Navy, working with the L3, and over the years, I developed skill sets. So that was a way to use my own unique experience. And a lot of people that are getting out of the military or coming in have some type of expertise that they could use. If you're young and you're coming in, that's where, so you have to have that hook. You have to have that, like, I'm going to solve this problem for you. I'm the one person that knows how to implement AI. I've
Right.
learned it. I know it. I understand Copilot, or I understand, OpenAI, and I can come in and solve this problem for you. So just because you're young, and you haven't been through the military, doesn't mean you don't have value.
Right.
Big organizations love to bring in, these experts. They're not digital natives. They haven't grown up with IT. Like I said, we had one computer, for 100 people. That's us. And now we have supercomputers in our pockets. So the value that this younger generation can bring to the government and larger organization is immense, because they just get it. They understand it. They get it. And they can say, well, if we did this and this and this, I can solve that problem for you. That the people that have been there for 30 years, it's just not how their brain is wired.
Right. Right. Can you share some of the common pitfalls to avoid when bidding government contracts?
So when bidding government contracts, I think most of the common pitfalls are not truly understanding the competitive landscape. It is very competitive, and with billions and billions of dollars going out the door on an annual basis, there's a lot of procurements. And I call it the shiny ball syndrome of focus on what you do really, really well. And, I understand if those contracts are 500K or 250K or whatever, go after what you can win. And they call it a P-win. I see companies and even startups see this shiny multi-year, multi-million dollar, oh, we can do this work. I know we can do it. Well, I know you can do it, but you haven't done it. Or, you haven't been tracking it. Does the agency know you? Do they understand your company? Have they ever heard of you? Companies spend millions and millions. The big companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars to win these contracts. And so they're out there creating a brand for themselves, making themselves aware. As a small company, you don't have that. So be careful of, if I win this contract, it's going to change our company. We're going to be huge now. It's $20 million a year. Not to say that it doesn't happen. There are plenty of stories out there where you hear these companies of 5, 10, 15 people winning these multi-billion-dollar, multi-year, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. But if you understand government contracting, there are reasons why they won those, because they have some very specific, very unique value that the organization is well aware of and they want to get to. So really focus in on what you do, be selective. The pitfall is trying to go after everything. I call it the shotgun method, and it will work. Some of the pitfalls of the shotgun method are sometimes you'll win contracts by bidding on everything, but there are reasons sometimes why people don't bid on contracts. And if you're the only one that bid on that contract and you win that contract, you might come to find out that that customer is not one that you really wanted. And a customer where you're either not making much money or losing money and is sucking up all your time is not beneficial to you growing your organization. I've had them, and as a small company, you have to deal with it. You can't. I mean, it's revenue. You can't walk away from it. The bigger companies can say, no, this is not a healthy relationship. I'm going to walk away from it. But going up front and knowing before you get into it, and making a conscious decision if you want to do. But with the shotgun method, you're just throwing out your bids and you're rolling them in. And I've seen some disastrous consequences in obtaining contracts and clients that distract you from the core abilities of your company and taking care of those clients that you really, really need to take care of. When you find a good client, don't let go of them. There's not a lot out there. And if you are on the same page with your client, ones you can help them complete their mission, help the warfighter, help, conservation, whatever their missions are, and make them look good. And it's going to help your company develop and grow. People don't want to work for customers that aren't fun to work with. And if you have to keep replacing people, it's not, you're going to have a churn. So the biggest pitfall is be careful with the shiny balls. Make sure you clearly understand who you're going to be working with, what type of customers they are. And the last part is price. It is the magical pricing. It's very difficult to understand what price is going to win. And if you're looking at LPTA, which is lowest price technically acceptable, what that means is if you meet the minimal standard, so basically everybody gets a C, is now thrown into a pool to use the cheapest. And the government tends to do that on things where, it's different when you're building a joint strike fighter. You kind of want the A players. They might be a little bit more, but there are work that the government says, look, it's something that, if it's a coffee mug, we have a standard, and we're going to take the cheapest. It's a coffee mug. I mean, we're not looking to pay $10,000 for a coffee mug. So pricing is a big part of it. I don't recommend LPTA as a strategy. You can work it, but government business has low margins in general because you have larger contracts for multi-years. If you're squeezing those down into less than 1% margins, is it really worth the work? For-profit companies are there for profit. That's the point. And the government wants you to make money. They don't want you to lose money. If you lose money and go out of business, guess what? They have to go find somebody else to solve their problem when they thought they already solved it. They spent a lot of time, money, and effort to go through this procurement process to select you for this work, and they want you to be successful. Going back to some clients, they might have a different take on that, but for the most part, they don't want to go back to the process to find somebody else.
Right.
They want you to be successful. They want you to make some money, not a ton. They don't want you to be making tons of money, but they want you to be successful. And so pricing it so you become successful is necessary, but that might mean you are the most technically competent of the bidders, but you might lose on price. So you really have to consider how you're going to do that. And I can't give you a magic formula. You can talk about wrap rates, you can talk about all kinds of different things. There's a million ways to skin that cat. But as a small business, as a business owner, that's probably going to be one of your biggest hurdles. And it's not a pitfall, it's just something that's going to keep you up at night. When you put that proposal in, you're like, did I overbid it? Did I underbid it? Did I, experience will help you with that. And losing will help you with that, and winning and finding out that you shouldn't have won because you bid it way under and you're struggling to do the work will help you learn too. So those are my, Ed Tuorinsky kind of recommendations in the government contracting world.
I appreciate you for that, sir. What is one thing that was hard when you started that's still hard today?
Hmm.
When you started in business, to be specific.
One thing that's, man, you want to pick one thing?
Yeah. Okay, a few things. I mean, I didn't say, if you want to pick a few. Some things don't go away, right? They think more money, more employees, more, like this problem will be solved, and it was not solved. It's,
yeah, more money, more problems. But
right.
It comes down to people, and that's probably the hardest thing. It was hard from the start, and it still is hard today. I thought that once you start to fill out, and recently we've been growing, so we have a chief operating officer now and a chief financial officer. And like, oh, all my people problems are going to go away. I'm going to push it down to them. It doesn't. People, even outside of cyber, they're your most valuable asset, and they can be your highest liability. Right now, I don't care, even if you're producing a software package, your developers and your coders and the people doing the work are the value of the organization. And the problem as I started was, hey, I don't even have full FTEs. Can you do this part-time for me? And finding those people that are willing to commit to the organization to help you out and to grow the company with you. And you have to trust in them. And sometimes that trust will be betrayed. And that's really, really hard. As you grow, you still have to trust in people that when people leave or people do things intentionally or unintentionally that steers the company off tracks, it's very, very difficult. And I tend to lean on the side of believing that people are fundamentally good and that they're going to do the right thing. That's who I am as a person. Everyone has their own interpersonal relationships and their trust factors, but when I bring people in, I treat them as with trust and with respect, and until they don't earn it. I know other business owners go the other way. As we're grown, we're still that problem. The other issue is, as you grow, sometimes you grow out of people. When I say is that people that help grow with a company, you have to bring in some outside talent, and sometimes that is very difficult when you've been in the trenches with people for a long time, and now we're bringing in people that have been there, done that, or other things. It's difficult to start to shuffle that around. So people have been the greatest accomplishment of this company is getting great people. And some of our greatest failures have been, people. Overall, I wouldn't change the decisions I made on those people, but I definitely have learned, and I've adjusted my decision making over the last 12, 13 years on who I bring in, how I interact with them. But fundamentally, I have to be me. I've learned that I'm a trusting person. I respect you, and that has gotten me farther than the opposite. And like I said, I know business owners that are complete opposite of me, and they're very successful. So that's just, once again, a little bit of Ed. I think be yourself, be who you are, be honest with yourself. And as long as you're honest with yourself and honest with the people that you are working with and that are helping grow the organization, you will be successful. There'll be some bumps in the road, trust me, but you'll be successful.
All right. What's one thing that's gotten easier with time and business?
What's gotten easier is not having to do everything.
Okay.
And so that has been a great relief as you grow. What I've seen, one of the great benefits is you can start to focus on the 5-year plans, the long-term planning, really get into, what do we need to put together to achieve our goals, our objectives, and really get into more of leading the organization as opposed to running the organization. And in my head, I'm sure there's people on the management team that would argue with that. When the company first started, they said it was Ed Tuorinsky. We got contracts because Ed either had the expertise, or I knew the owner of the company, or I had worked with that government entity before, and I was a known quantity, known value. They wanted to hire. It's the same thing if you're hiring people in an organization. Hey, you and I work together at L3 Communications. I know you're great. I want to hire you, as opposed to I met you for a half hour, 45 minutes, an interview, or maybe another hour. I don't really know you. You say you can do the work. You're going to go with known quantities. And then the company started to morph into DTS. So then people were hiring the corporate capabilities. We had past performance, we had references, we had experience, we had other people in the organization that were good at what they do and could help sell solutions to our customers. And then I was still doing everything from accounts receivable to payables to taxes to filling out 1 million government forms for every compliance standard that you need, coming up with training on whatever, trying to figure out if we had any banned electronics in our supply chain, the Huawei thing. So it's those things that just add up, and I don't miss them, but as I've grown, I've been able to get people that are experts in CPAs, that are legal experts. They know how to do this. They do this on a daily basis. It's really easy for them, and it alleviates that operating off of my plate, so I can really focus on leading the company, growing the company, and not have to focus on the daily operations. And so that has gotten easier from that standpoint. The harder part is now everyone's looking at me. they're saying, okay, Ed, you have one thing to do, is to grow this company, make us successful, and we're relying on you. So you can't be like, oh, I was filling out some government form and I missed our goals for this year.
Right.
It's it's a different role. So with my job being a little bit easier on the day-to-day tasks, it's definitely gotten harder on and more pressure, and there's more people counting on me which means their families and, their well-being. It's it gets a little harder. I'm not shying away from it. I'm really enjoying it. But once again, there are times I can't go to bed at night because I'm thinking about something, and I wake up in the middle of the night scared to death. And then in the morning, I said, well, let's put my socks and shoes on and go solve this problem. Which a couple of years ago, I was so involved in the day-to-day operations. I would think about these things, but they weren't on my mind. It was waking up and we got to get corporate taxes done. Let's walk through it.
Right. No, that's good. Those are very valid points. I understand. You served on the board for National Veteran Small Business Coalition. Can you tell people about that organization who've never heard of it before, please?
Yeah. So the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, NVSBC, it serves businesses, veteran businesses in the federal market space. And my things, they are the best out there. There's very few that do it. There's a bunch of different niche organizations, but they really focus on helping veteran-owned businesses to be successful. There's 3 different stages that they really look at. There's that initial, hey, I started a business, maybe I've gone through some training to understand how to do this and fill out the forms. I started it. I have, a quarter of an FTE here or there. I'm just getting started. So it's that getting off the ground, whether you're, 4 years out of the military or 40 years out of the military. And then the biggest swath of members that we have is really that small to mid-size area. So, 5 million to 50 million. They have enough contracts, they're generating revenue, they're building their company, they're doing well. And then there's ones that ultra successful, either large businesses or they've grown their business and sold their business there. So a lot of the focus is on education and training, how they can help it from government contracts 101 all the way up to a lot of things we talked about, from taxes to compliance to bidding on contracts to pricing. Organization tries to put a lot of emphasis on those, and taking those that have been there, done that, and going back and mentoring that initial group. Veterans have just a natural way of saying, hey, look, I'm gonna pull you along and help you. It's what they were trained to do, to guide and mentor and lead. So that's just an inherent good problem to have in an organization when you have a bunch of business owners that want to help each other out. And so the overall organization really focuses on those veteran businesses. They do advocacy on the Hill to help promote veteran businesses, a lot of training and education, and then networking and opportunities. Puts you in front of people in the government who want to buy what you are selling. So those are the 3 tenets that they focus on. It's a wonderful organization. I was president up until June of this year. Been on the board for 6 years. I'm now off the board and not the president. Handed that over, but it is one of the best organizations I feel that's out there for veteran-owned businesses. And just because you're not a veteran-owned business doesn't mean you can't be part of it. It's good camaraderie, very good people, a lot of partnerships form out of this, prime sub relationships, and then mentor protege relationships. It's just a really good organization, and it is expanding out to other markets such as Huntsville, San Diego, Dayton, Ohio, really trying to get out to where government contracting hubs are, to give veterans opportunities to meet government buyers, say why I'm unique, why I can solve a problem for you, and get those initial contracts.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And you said that it's open to all organizations, not just veterans.
It's open to all organizations, not
Okay.
just veterans. But the focus is to support veteran-owned
Right.
businesses. But if you're a legal entity and you want to join to a bank, if you're a large company, if you're a woman-owned, a hub zone, an 8A, anyone's welcome. And I know they have their own organizations that can support. I highly recommend it once again because veterans are slightly different business owners. They're great to work with, and for the most part, they truly want to help each other out. Even if you're a veteran, non-veteran, if you're a good company and you have value, they're going to want to work with you.
How did you first get involved with them?
I was at a conference and John Condon, I'm not sure if he was the president or not. He's bought and sold many companies, very successful man. He was at a booth. I walked up and started talking to him, and he gave me hopefully the same spiel I gave you about how wonderful veteran business owners are, and it's a great community, and you have to be part of it. And if we work together as veterans, we can also help with advocacy and help veteran companies in the federal space. And I started to go to their DC dinners. They were at the Marriott in Roslyn. Beautiful location. Now I think they're demolishing it to build something that we don't need. But it just started to meet the people, and they're just good people. And as I got more and more involved, decided I wanted to apply for the board, and got on the board, and then from there kind of supported all the way through to becoming an officer, and hopefully leaving the good old military mantra, leave it better off than when you arrived. As one of my sergeants even said, we go into a room, it's going to be cleaner when you left than when we came in. I'm like, how does that work? If everyone's making it cleaner and it's really clean when you get there, how can it be cleaner when you left than when you arrived? And he just looked at me like, Ed, sir, stop. Just make sure you pick up after yourself. I said, okay, I got it.
I like
But
that.
it's a great organization, and they're doing very well. And I think they're doing great things for veteran-owned businesses on the Hill, with the government, with advocacy, networking, and training.
Love it, love it, love it. You know, as you're going through a journey as a small business owner, what type of tools did you have that helped you learn how to become a better business owner? We just mentioned an organization that you're a part of, but what other types of tools did you use that have helped you in learning how to manage and grow a successful small business? Were there any other resources, in terms of like books, trainings that you might have attended that you could also recommend to the next generation of small business owners coming behind you?
One, as I said before, don't be afraid to make mistakes, but learn from them. And I think that real on-the-job training is invaluable. As far as formal training, I've gone through, they get it wrong. They were the PTACs,
Okay.
and I think
Yeah.
they're Apex
Apex.
Accelerator. Apex Accelerators now. That I got to work with a gentleman who had built a successful small business, and he just started to go through the basic business planning with me, to set some basic KPIs to come up with, what is your value proposition? What what are you trying to solve? So that was good. And then trying to find some mentors, if you're lucky. It's very hard. And find a good group of colleagues. I think that was probably the best area, and still the best area. Find other people that are around the same area as you. That ones that maybe they have $1 million in contracts or $2 million. They've gotten past that hurdle of getting their first contract, and they can give you guidance. You got to have that group of people that you can just talk the truth to. and have that ability to be like, man, I'm getting beat down today. It's hard. I don't want to do this anymore, or I keep losing, and to have that group of confidence, and that group will start larger. It'll start to get smaller, but then you can replace people. I didn't say that in a nice way, but you can add people to it, because some business owners just say I'm done with it, and they do go away. But to me, that group of colleagues that you can have shared experiences with and shared wins and losses, I think is important, and really to help you. That was probably the number one reason why I stayed in it, because we're all in that fight together. We're all trying to be successful. We're encouraging each other. We're helping each other out where we can. And that was important. As far as education, organizations like MBSBC, there's AFCEA has some good education, PSC Council, IACT. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations that can help you out with business 101, bidding 101 to 201, going to conferences, going to these things and getting, information from people who have been there, done that, people in the government to say, this is what you guys need to do. Come here and tell me this, is important as you go. There's a lot of free education out there. Well, I wouldn't say it's free. You might have to pay for lunch. It's $50. It's not, but the value that you're getting from, these people who are highly experienced, highly talented, highly paid, is worth it. As you grow, you'll be like, well, I've heard that speech 1,000 times, but I'm networking. It's okay. And when you get to that point, that's a good point to be like, hey, look, I already know this. I know how to solve that problem. I know how to, price a contract. I know how to fill out SAM. I know how to, do cost type accounting. So that'd be my recommendation. Get a good group of colleagues that you trust, that you can have, good private conversations with, and laugh together and cry together. And we like to have some drinks together too.
All right, there you go. So we're coming to a close. Now, something that I've started doing recently is asking my previous guest to give me a question for my next guest. So the previous guest, this is the question that they posed for the next podcast guest. And it says, how are you as you give to others? How do you refill your own cup as you give so much to other people?
Wow. That's a complex philosophical question there.
I know I could have come up with it, so I that's why I gave you the preference what it was. But we'll stick with the last part. How do you refill your cup as you give so much to other people?
I'm gonna turn the question on its head. That's how I refill my cup is by giving to others, supporting, for example, the MBSBC. I'm on a board in Western Pennsylvania that's helping with economic development in the area. I grew up there. It's where I'm from, and as all of us know, when the steel mills and the coal mines and the natural gas industry left, the jobs weren't there. So working to be on a board to try to rebuild the job market, bring some more high tech back to there. We started an office in Indiana, Pennsylvania to hire cybersecurity experts, and it's growing. We're hiring more. It's there's not a lot of jobs outside of Pittsburgh, in what used to be considered the coal mining towns, and the gas country, and oil country. That's how I fill my cup is by giving back to the community, trying to help other people. It's something that really makes me happy, and sometimes that can be my time, it can be my mentorship, and sometimes it's just donating some money to an organization that I think is worthy of having it and using it to help whatever their cause is. So that's how I give back to myself.
All right.
And
Nice.
having the means to do it and the time and the knowledge to do it, that's special to me. Is I've been lucky to have those means and have the experiences to pass on to other people to hopefully help them better their life.
Okay. What would be the question that you'd ask for the next podcast, guys?
Oh, what would be the question to ask for the next podcast? It's not going to be as thoughtful as that question, that's for sure.
It's okay. It's not, you know.
Um,
I mean, think about your peers, right? And people that are in your similar position. What would you want to know about them that maybe something that I like to think of it as maybe it's something that I experience that other people, you don't know that other people experience. And so that's probably where that question originated from, right?
I would really be interested in knowing, why do they wake up every day and keep doing what they're doing? What is it that drives them to keep going down sometimes this path of, it feels like you're beating your head against the wall? When they wake up in the morning, as I said, I have to tell myself, I get up, get dressed, get ready, and say, all right, we're going to solve this problem. Let's go. Let's do this. There are days when you're like, I don't want to put those shoes on, because as I know, there's a bunch of problems that I got to solve. But so what do they do to really, well, get up and get going and to start the day to tackle those problems? I'd be interested to hear some of those things that would be helpful.
Okay.
And they're not going to tell you, though, I don't want to get out of bed. They're going to be like, I'm a killer. I get up and I crush
Right.
things every day.
Right.
But I know that's not the truth.
Of course not. Right. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And then, two last questions. One that I've heard before is if you had a billboard that you can put a big sign, what would you write on the billboard that everyone could see?
For the corporate or for Emory?
Just for like, it could be philosophical, it could be something to the world, it could be something for humanity. What would you want to put in a billboard that we could all read?
I don't understand why people are so mean. It's just, I put up in the billboard and just get over yourself and be nice. Just
Okay.
we're in an environment where I don't understand that. I mean, I like to get angry. That's one of my favorite things. But really just yeah, suck it up, cupcake, and just move on.
There you go.
You're not that special.
Right. Right.
And being mean to the other person is not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
And then the last thing for small businesses listening to this, what are some parting words that you can leave them with as they are entering this journey, they are starting this journey, they are feeling, overwhelmed? What were some parting words you'd like to say to them?
If you're wondering what to do now that Trump is in office, get a free 15-minute assessment call with one of our coaches. Visit govconeric.com/call to sign up today. Get a free diagnostic of what you and your business should be doing in 2025 to start winning. Now that DEI is gone, all the citizens are being challenged. Figure out where are all the opportunities and what you can do under this new administration to win in 2025.
So the basis of what I've said all along, it's that 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We kind of get knocked down, and this might sound like one of those speeches in the football locker room, and yay, we're gonna go out there and crush it. But it's not easy, and you will run into new obstacles every single day. But if you've committed to going down this path, really try to stick it out. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a reason why you made this decision, and just get up in the morning, put your pants on, put your socks and shoes on, and go out there and solve problems. And if you keep knocking them down, you're gonna win. But you got to get up and you got to knock. Some days I view it in my mind as, once again, going to sports and the football is when you have those blockers in front of you, you're knocking it down, you go in the next one, you knock it down, go in the next one. And then eventually you're going to get to that goal of either tackling the quarterback or getting into the end zone. But you got to keep moving forward. You got to knock those obstacles down, and you got to reach that goal. I mean, there's no other option.
Ed, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thanks.